We are live.
Could I be the one to ring the bell?
Absolutely.
Should I do it?
Ring the bell.
Okay, let me...
Back by popular demand.
Hello.
Mrs. A.T. How have you been, Nina?
Hanging in there. Thank God. Thank God.
We've got to smile. We've got to laugh. We've got to keep our sense of humor, folks. We're actually going to go live a little bit earlier today, but there was a press conference from the government, and who knows? Who knows? They're saying this thing might end a little sooner than people expected. Doesn't mean tomorrow or next week.
Yeah, I mean...
It's still a long way off.
Yeah.
We took a walk today.
Yeah.
You've been taking a lot of walks?
Yeah, I'm taking a walk every day. LA is just like a ghost town. It's just...
Are you going to share that into the forum? So this is what Nina's usually doing off camera.
Hasn't shown up yet. That's...
Refresh that page. I bet it'll show up. This is what Nina does off camera. As soon as I go live, she's sharing it into the Accidental Talmudist forum. So you're just waiting for it to come up in order. That's pinned to top. It is live. There it is. Okay. And so today you're going to act as a student, basically?
I'm the student. I'm today's student.
Okay. But Nina will have the opportunity to monitor comments a little more closely than I'm able to do it while I'm talking. So definitely today's a good day to ask questions, to make comments. We've got the donate button on. We don't usually put it on. But people have been asking. I mean, they know how important this work is. We are funded by a nonprofit. We do have a small staff, but we pay. And we want to be able to keep our staff on and not be so hard hit by this. We've postponed our annual fundraising campaign. But just remember, any money that you donate to Accidental Talmudist, you share in the wonderful merit of sharing Torah, with one of the largest online audiences for Torah in the world. So it's very valuable. If you do donate using the Facebook button, please include your email so that we can send you the tax receipt for the nonprofit donation.
Right, like some people, thank you so much, you've given on Facebook, but we don't know who you are.
Some people are anonymous. Right. Let us give you the tax receipt. If you donate on Facebook, put in your email address. All right, so that's about as much as we have to say about the virus today. Some days I have more to say about the virus than others.
Some people want to know what you have to say about the virus. Other people feel like you talk about it too much and they want a little bit of a break. So we're trying to find that. We're not going to ignore the craziness that's going on.
No.
But neither are we going to dwell on it because this is about...
I mean, what I will say, not directly, oh my gosh, Deborah Renee Hazelwood donated.
Oh,
Thank you,
Deborah.
Thank you
so much, sweetie.
That's beautiful. It means a lot to us.
It means so much to us.
Maybe we'll give her a shofar blow.
Yeah.
The ram's horn is over there. But what I wanted to mention is Passover's coming up. So we have Rosh Chodesh Nisan is this Thursday. That's the month of Nisan. And then Passover begins halfway into the month of Nisan. So Passover is definitely on people's minds.
Right. So let me just interject. I don't know if I'm the only one, but I'm in the weird situation of stocking up on food at the same time that I'm trying to get rid of food before Passover. So things like rice and pasta and bread are really good to stock up on, but that's actually just what I'm trying to get rid of right now. So it's like, get rid of the stuff I want to get rid of, but make sure we have enough. So basically I'm buying a lot of potatoes. And Edward Berg says your community Seder has been canceled. I mean, it is crazy. I never thought that I would see the day when rabbis from across the spectrum are saying, don't go to shul, don't pray, don't daven with a minyan, don't pray with the required 10 Jews, and don't invite anybody at your Seder table. I mean, Passover is like, that's when we have lots of guests, and this year, no. It's just gonna be our little family of 4.
You have a new recipe for that pepper steak.
Yeah.
That's gonna be a good Passover recipe to serve with potatoes.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's get back to our learning. We are holding, okay, so welcome to our class, Nina. You are the live student standing in for everybody.
I'm standing in for all of you guys.
Okay. So we're on Shabbos 18, page 18 of Tractate Shabbos. And we're now opening the 5th Mishnah. We're still in chapter 1. And now we're discussing activities that are prohibited. They're prohibited labors on Shabbos. And so we don't want, the question is, can we start them right before Shabbat begins? And so the sort of example to have in mind is the cholent, right?
Okay.
So you cook the cholent, right? You put it on in the crock pot.
For those that don't know, so that we can have hot food on Shabbat, but we can't cook on Shabbat. So there's a stew that cooks on a low heat all Friday night. And then you wake up on Saturday and the whole place smells. It's really good. But you can't have it cooked. You have to have it actually cooked.
As we'll see, most of the real cooking happened before Shabbat began.
Right. It has to be mostly cooked. Yeah.
And so we look at several activities that are like that. It's sort of like you start a process that can proceed by itself. A Jew cannot do labor on Shabbat, right? You can't be mowing your lawn on Shabbat. The question would be, can you turn on some kind of, like there's a Roomba, right? Like those automatic vacuum cleaners that go around the house. Could you turn that on before Shabbat and it would be running around during the work? That's actually an interesting question.
Can you set a dishwasher to run?
Can you set a dishwasher to run during Shabbos? So,
because our dishwasher actually has that. I haven't used it because I didn't know if you can. But you can actually set it to run.
And that's going to be a
question.
Right, and that's going to be a question that's going to come up is must the utensils, the tools, the machines owned by a Jew, can they work during Shabbat? So let's get into this. Okay, so generally speaking, this is a big division between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. The students, the followers, the school of Shammai, and the followers, the academy of Hillel. At some point, I'm going to have to just use certain terms and not translate them every time. Right. But I'm doing my best to accommodate people who are just joining us for the first time.
If there's a word that you don't know what it means, please pipe up in the comments. And maybe we should put together like a glossary.
We really need a glossary.
Commonly used words, so you don't have to go through it every time.
All right, so Beis Shammai say you cannot put, for example, some kind of a crop, a reed that you're going to soak, like flax, you're going to soak it in water, and it's going to be softening so that you can turn it into, thread and eventually clothing. So you can't start that soaking process right before Shabbat so that it's working during Shabbat. You can't give clothing to your non-Jewish launderer so that he can do the work on Shabbat. All you did was give him the clothing before Shabbat. Beis Shammai say you can't make ink, right? So if ink is taken from certain plants, that extraction process of removing the dye from the plant, you could just start it and then leave it, and the process is still going during Shabbat. You can't do that according to Beis Shammai. But according to Beis Hillel, you can. As long as the Jew is not doing the prohibited labor on Shabbat, he can initiate certain kinds of processes before Shabbat begins and let it continue on its own during Shabbat. All agree that you could put a beam on the olive press, right? So you put like a weight on something that's pressing a bunch of olives to crush the oil out of it. So you can put weight on the beam, and then it can continue, that weight sitting on the olives and pushing oil out of the olives during Shabbat. And I'm not sure why Beis Shammai allows that. I think it's because it's so passive that even
it's just there.
Right, it's not. There's not a grinding going on. Right,
it's
just all it's doing. That beam needs to be somewhere. Okay, it's on top of the olives, but no other work is being done. Just gravity is pulling it down, and perhaps that's why they allow it to happen. Our sages say we may open a canal next to a garden, and water could come out of the canal and sort of passively water the garden all through Shabbat, right? So that's And that's not the same as an irrigation system, that is computer controlled and has certain things. But as we know, in the modern world, you can use a timer, right? You can put your lights on a timer. You could put your lawn on a timer. These things can be done. And probably that's related to this teaching, because the sages the law follows Beis Hillel, right? So the halacha follows Beis Hillel. You can initiate some of these processes before Shabbat begins, and things can continue. One is that you open a canal and water seeps out into the garden. Another one that is allowed, you can put incense that's burning on the ground, and the smoke of the incense and the beautiful aroma of the incense is rising through clothing. So in the ancient world, they would perfume clothing with incense. It's kind of interesting. Wow. And you could allow that process to proceed during Shabbat. Likewise, you could put sulfur underneath silver. That would add a certain color to the silver. And that could continue to happen during Shabbat. In both of these cases, allowing the incense to waft up through the clothing or the sulfur to rise into the metal, there's no danger that the person will come to adjust the flame or will adjust the incense. There's no danger, because in those processes, allowing the incense to rise through the clothing or the sulfur into the metal, if you changed the condition, if you went and adjusted the coals or changed the position of the sulfur or the fire or something, it would actually be detrimental to the process. The clothing would be harmed in some way, and so would the silver. However, where there is a danger that a person might come to adjust the fire or the wick or the cooking or the temperature, or they would actually be doing the act of cooking because they make a change, then they prohibit. And that's why you can't start, a dish that you're cooking and it continues cooking on Shabbat in an active way. Right. With a cholent, there's no way that you're going to adjust the temperature under the cholent. Right. And you already mostly cooked the meat. Or you did cook the meat.
Like I always like to put egg, like you just put a raw egg in just an egg in an egg shell in there, and it cooks, and it's a delicious hard-boiled egg by the time you eat it. But so I couldn't, like, once Shabbat starts, realize, I should have put a couple more eggs in there and put them in at that point.
You could definitely not do that. And it only works because that egg mostly cooked before Shabbat began.
Correct. Yeah.
Right? So the operative principle is you can't start a process before Shabbat that in some way might tempt you to interfere with that process during Shabbat. Then we have a very interesting case of the mill. Okay? So you can imagine what a mill is, especially in the ancient world. A mill is, you've heard of the millstone, right? So a millstone was two round stones, and grain would go in between them, right? And it would be like hard kernels of grain. You can imagine barley, or almost like bran buds.
Okay. But it needs to grind it.
It needs to be ground in order to become flour, right? So, could you put grain between the millstones if it was just going to, on autopilot, keep grinding during Shabbat? Answer, according to Beis Shammai, no.
No way.
According to Beis Hillel, in terms of a prohibited labor, yes, it is allowed.
If it's continuing.
If it's continuing.
Oh.
There we have to make a distinction between two kinds of mills. If a mill is operated by the power of an animal, right? So like an oxen or horses are walking in a circle, right? Making the millstone turn. Prohibited, no way. The animal of a Jew cannot work on Shabbat. Oh. But if the millstone is powered by a water wheel in a river, so it's constant, it's going to keep going anyway.
Right.
Right? So then you could, in terms of prohibited labor, it would not be prohibited because the Jew is no longer active. He put the grain in, and now it just grinds by itself without further thought or action or supervision from the Jew, from the Jewish person. However, our sages prohibited it anyway, in most cases, because the grain that's grinding between the millstones is loud.
Oh.
It makes a noise.
Oh, making a noise is something you can't do?
Not making a noise per se, but attracting attention to the fact that there's work being done on Shabbat.
Oh,
right? So this is one of those things that is considered not Shabbatistic, not Shabbatistic, not Shabbosistic.
Like with the dishwasher, if I were to set the dishwasher, which I don't think you can, and maybe one of the reasons is the dishwasher makes noise.
Yes.
And so if we're kind of like at the Shabbos table finishing up or whatever, and then we hear the dishwasher start working in the kitchen, that wouldn't be really...
It somehow says to the world that Shabbos isn't being honored.
Just an everyday, right.
However, where there's a case of real financial loss involved, right?
And that's
where a person has made arrangements so that the grain can be ground on Shabbos without any prohibited labor being done by a Jew, and if he doesn't do it, he's going to go out of business. Okay, so then they would allow it to happen.
Okay.
Also, if you rent your mill to a non-Jew. Now, the passerby doesn't realize what financial arrangement you've made. He doesn't know that you've rented it to a non-Jew and the non-Jew is grinding his flour.
Shapiro Mill, owned and operated by Moshe Shapiro.
Rented to.
Right.
You know, so people know that a Jew owns that mill and they see it working on Shabbat, so they might wonder, but the fact is it was known that it was possible to rent your mill or sell it. I mean, you could sell it, but in this case we're not selling it, we're renting it. Oh, thank you, James. I see that you just donated. That really means a lot to us.
Thank you so much, James. You are a pillar of this community.
And so we owe two shofar blows, which I'll mention in 1 second.
Okay.
So you could rent the mill to a non-Jew, and he could be grinding his flour over the course of Shabbat, and you're not violating the prohibition yourself.
But do you make use of what was ground, or do you sell that or that's for him?
So the question is he grinding your grain? If he's grinding
his grain, what's
now,
the point?
So this is what's interesting. So you cannot, as we know, right? Like if you're in a hotel and by mistake you turned on a light in your hotel room and your Shabbos, your Shomer Shabbos, right? You don't turn light switches on and off on Shabbat. You can't go downstairs to the man at the front desk and say, could you turn my light off in my room? I'm Jewish and I can't do it. Because you can't appoint an agent to do a labor for you that is prohibited if done by you. What you can do is you can say, there's a light on in my room.
Before Shabbat, as you're checking in,
you could let him know.
You could say, I'm Shabbat observant.
Or even if it's on, you're allowed to say, there's a light on in my room and I can't turn it off.
If you hadn't set up beforehand, they're not going to know what you're talking about. There's a light on my room, so go turn it off. But if you beforehand
you can even say, I'm Jewish and I cannot turn it off.
I wish I could turn it off.
I wish I could turn it off. You can't ask him to turn it off.
You could say it's going to be so hard.
But you can let him know what's going on with you.
You say, it's going to be so hard for me to sleep in room 307. What am I going to do?
Likewise, you can give your laundry to a non-Jew if it is convenient for him or her to do your laundry on Saturday. Then they can do it. But you can't say to them, please do my laundry on Saturday so that I can get it Saturday night because I need it.
Oh.
Right? So you can't commission work. You can't commission something to be done for you that you can't do yourself on Shabbat.
Okay.
But if it's convenient to the non-Jew to do that work on Saturday, you can't say to them, hey, don't work on Saturday.
Don't ask, don't tell. Give it to them on Thursday. You're picking up Sunday.
It's up to them. It's up to them. Interestingly, what you can't do is if you have a non-Jew who is your regular employee, you can't say to him, it would be nice if this got done.
Okay.
Because then he's much more close to you. He's closer to you as your agent.
Oh.
It's like you can give something to do to somebody who's a general contractor or you have a casual relationship with, or you're hiring them to do a job, but not on an hourly contract. It's just when this thing is done, I'll pay you. I mean, obviously I won't pay you on Shabbat, but if it's convenient to the non-Jew for his schedule to do something on Shabbat, he can make that decision. You can't ask him to do that. Okay. And this brings us to the interesting case of Ben's Deli. So Ben's Deli is a kosher deli I've eaten at the one in Palm Beach, Florida, and apparently there's a bunch of other branches in the New York area. The one in Florida is delicious, I can tell you. It is a kosher deli. It is not glot kosher. Some people, that's a kind of stricture that they require. It is a kosher deli that is open on Shabbat. How is that possible? How could a Jewish deli that's kosher be open on Shabbat? And the answer is that they have a long-standing arrangement where every Friday they lease the whole deli to a non-Jew.
Because there's a place in LA, a kosher bagel place that's open on Saturday.
Meaning it is owned and operated on Shabbat by a non-Jew.
Wow.
If you're an observant Jew, you wouldn't eat there on Shabbat. You can't. You could go there Saturday night, but you can't eat on Saturday night until there's been enough time since Shabbat ended for that food to have been made, even if it was made during Shabbat.
Oh.
If the food was made on Shabbat specifically for you, you can never eat it.
Oh.
But if food was made, right, so it becomes qualified for you to eat it after enough time has passed after Shabbat ends, so that it could have been made in the period of time since Shabbat ended. Yes.
We have a question here.
Question.
From Orion Devo?
I want to make a shofar blow. One was for James, and who was the other one for? Was it Deborah? Was that her name? It was a name I haven't seen before.
Yes, I'm pretty sure it was Deborah. Hang on.
Oh, yeah. So
you know what, it doesn't.
Find that.
You have to,
Can I see it here? I can't see it there. You'll let me know. Well, this one is for James. James is a very dear friend of our show. He's been learning with us for a long time and keeping us like sort of a part of his journey, his faith journey. And so James, this one goes out to you and all your loved ones. May you stay safe and may you always grow in health and wisdom.
Amen. Yeah. Deborah Renee Hazelwood.
And for Deborah Renee Hazelwood, who I'm not sure if you've donated before, but I haven't seen your name in a long time.
Thank you so much.
So thank you so much, and may you and all your loved ones stay safe and weather the storm and come out the other side even better than you went in.
Amen.
And may you all grow in health and wisdom every day.
Amen.
Now, what's the question?
The question is, hang on, I have to go to my other screen, blah, blah, blah. Okay. It's, Orion says, what about motion or voice activated lights or something like a clapper where you don't actually touch a light switch? Is it the intention of turning on the lights that matter? Okay, you definitely shouldn't do a clapper like intentionally.
Excellent question.
It's a great question because like sometimes we will be walking on Shabbat evening and you walk and you pass somebody's
like somebody
house
has a motion activated light.
Right. So that's definitely happened, and I always feel like, oh, ooh. But so if you kind of like know that on a certain block,
if you know you're going to turn that light on,
you can avoid that
when you walk by it, and you don't avoid it. Yeah, you might be liable actually for desecrating Shabbos.
Although, what if you don't avoid it because it's too dark and you're worried that it's not safe?
Then you needed to make different arrangements. But if you had no intent to make the light go on and you just walk by, so you had no intention to turn on the light, this motion activated light that you just walk by someone's house, so then you're not liable. You did not. That is not a violation of Shabbos.
Recently, sometimes you might.
And that tells you that it is about your intent, right? Did you intend to turn on the light? A casual walking by, you didn't intend. But if in your house with your voice or with a clap you could turn lights on, then you did turn a light on purpose, and that is prohibited. You can't do that. What you can do, what we have, is timers. Excuse me. So you have timers on your lights, and you just figure out in advance. You know, luckily I highly recommend Lutron Casita switches. You can put them in your house. And it's so nice that you can program them to go on an hour before sunset, for example, go off at 11 o'clock at night, go back on in the morning. You can have multiple schedules going. It's very nice.
I just noticed that Ivan Bowman is here. Hello,
Ivan.
I believe we got a donation from Ivan.
Ivan sent us a very nice check from his home in Las Vegas.
If you're still watching, this blast is for you.
Ah, this one's for you, Ivan. Okay, there's a question about the Noahide laws in Shabbat. Do you have that? And somebody said there's a medical doctor here.
May you and your loved ones be blessed with health, wellness, safety, and weather this storm.
Amen.
May we all weather this storm. So James Roth says, I can't find anything regarding the Noahide laws regarding not working on Shabbat.
And you won't.
I do not believe the Noahide.
We're getting an emergency alert on this phone. I hope it doesn't interrupt the show.
Stay at home, says the emergency alert.
Yes.
We already know that. We're already staying at home.
James, you have not found any information about the Noahide laws and Shabbat because there are none.
It's not one of the Noahide laws.
It is not one of the Noahide laws, right? So the law that a Jew cannot perform any prohibited labors on Shabbat, which is one of the 10 Commandments, is not a universal law. A non-Jew is not obligated to keep Shabbos. And can we name the 7 Noahide laws off the top of our heads? You must know God, right? You know about God and not deny God.
Right. Don't murder.
Don't blaspheme, right? Don't swear in vain or use the name of God inappropriately. So those 2.
Don't murder.
Don't murder.
No sexual immorality.
No sexual
Adultery
immorality. No stealing.
Put up a system of laws and justice.
Make a system of laws in court.
And one of them, which I've always wondered about.
The 7th.
So one of them is do not eat a limb from a living animal. And it always seems so weird to me. Like, who would do that? Eat an animal while it's living? I thought of all, there's only 7 Noahide laws. One of them is something so bizarre as eating a limb from a live animal. Well, guess what? This awful virus that we're all dealing with right now.
That's where it comes from.
It came from eating bats, and I actually saw a horrific video. I wish I hadn't clicked on it on YouTube of when I saw with my own eyes somebody eating a live bat. I could never unsee that. But it's a really big sin.
It's a
according
big,
to the Torah.
big sin.
Yeah, it always seemed so irrelevant, but actually it could not be more relevant now. So wait, I think that was just 6 though.
No, we got all 7.
Oh, we didn't? Okay.
Yeah. So let us return. So we're getting back to what can you do right before Shabbat that's going to continue during Shabbat. And we talked a little bit about the cholent, right? Mm-hmm. And when you make a cholent, you can't just throw raw meat into the cholent pot, right? You need to cook it.
Well, you need to
brown it.
You need to brown it, but that doesn't cook it. You need to put it in the cholent pot a couple hours before Shabbat to make sure.
It needs to be cooked. So meat that you're going to allow to cook during Shabbat is basically, it's already gotten its flavor, right? You're really just heating it. You're keeping it hot over Shabbat. It's going to continue cooking, but the most significant part of its cooking has already happened before Shabbat. And where do we get that? Our sages say meat has to be cooked as much as Ben Drosai would cook his meat.
Oh.
So Ben Drosai was one of, I don't know if he was a sage or he was just a character in ancient Israel, but he was known. He liked his steak rare.
Okay.
So the minimum measure of how cooked the meat has to be is as much as Ben Drosai would cook it. And most people estimate that Ben Drosai would have his meat half cooked, right? And some say 1/3 cooked, right? So really, if you're just searing it, and like really browning the outside, and it's largely uncooked on the inside, as long as Ben Drosai would eat it that way, so then you've cooked it enough before Shabbat begins.
Right, like if I just brown my short ribs, they're not even edible.
Right.
Like that.
So that's got to be done before Shabbat began, right? And then basically what people will do is use a blech, which is not really cooking. It's just keeping it warm. It's just a hot plate to keep things warm Friday night. The cholent keeps cooking, but it's not really cooking. It keeps, mixing, as it were,
right.
under heat. But the primary cooking already happened before Shabbat began. And then the last thing that we'll find on our daf here on page 18 of Tractate Shabbos, just one little thought, which is, can you sell something right before Shabbat begins, right? Now, you can't be selling during Shabbat, right? You cannot sell something to a Jew if you know that he's going to be carrying it to his house and he won't get it into his house before Shabbat begins, right? So you can't put that stumbling block before another Jew.
Okay.
You can sell to a non-Jew as long as he has enough time before Shabbat begins to get the purchased item out of your house, lest he, in a transaction that you participated in, he's now carrying an object, there was a thought that you couldn't sell it to him if there wasn't a chance for him to get it to his house by the time Shabbat begins. And I said, no, we don't have to do that. That's a stringency that's not necessary. But you don't want him carrying a just purchased item in your house, right? So he's carrying something that's not on his property. He's going to carry it out. He's going to go from the private domain into the public domain when he leaves your house after Shabbat began, and you participated in that process. So you want to make sure that if you sell something to a non-Jew, he has enough time to get it out of your house before Shabbat begins.
That's similar because just a couple weeks ago, well, maybe a month ago, we had a plumbing emergency on Friday.
Very good.
And
Very good.
the plumber was not Jewish, but we had to still explain to him, please, do it if you can have it done before Shabbat.
Well, he wanted to keep working, right? They did work on Shabbat.
Oh, did they? I thought they were done before. Remember, because
no, they got it so that the system was operational.
Right.
One of the bathrooms was operational.
Oh, but so they came on Shabbat though.
They came on Shabbat, but that was a convenience for them because they wanted to get this job done so they could move on to another job.
Okay.
Right. And what we told them was during Shabbat, we can't be consulted. If you have a question like, should I dig the trench here or there? Should I throw these things away here or there? They're like, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to participate in any of that work that's being done. So I let them know before Shabbat began. But that was a convenience for them that they could do on that date.
Okay.
So that's what we've got for today. I would say that the takeaway, once again, so many of these laws, right? It's that you wanna follow the law so that you don't come to violate a biblical prohibition. And so the rabbis will enact extra stringencies so that you don't violate a biblical prohibition. But the effect of these laws, the effect of the original Torah laws, and the sort of expansions that the rabbis added to it in order to protect us from violating the Torah laws, the effect of all this is that we have to think in advance of how we're going to conduct ourselves. Having extra laws, by definition, makes a person more mindful. And there's very few things that a Jew can't do. Like you can own a business, you can travel. You're not going to be able to eat in non-kosher restaurants, right? And so when we became religious, that was something that we had to say goodbye to. So there's certain things you can't do, but you can eat a good steak, right? You can't eat a veal parmesan. You can't eat
a filet mignon.
There's certain cuts of the steak that you can't eat, but you can eat delicious things. You just have to think it through, right? And, in Ami magazine, which we enjoy reading, right, you enjoy those articles about these religious Jews, like really religious, who go to North Korea and Pakistan.
It's really one of the best publications around now. I mean, it's just, they send their, correspondence to the craziest places. So you get these, very religious Jews going to North Korea, Saudi Arabia, Iran, and the North Korea one was fascinating because it would be challenging for any, Westerner to go, American to go to North Korea. But this guy's going through with his bag with his tefillin, and he's going through, and the Korean guys are like, "What's this?" And he had to explain it,
and he wouldn't bow down to the supreme leader.
The supreme leader came, and everybody bowed, and he wouldn't do. Well, I don't bow down to anyone. It's amazing. He got out of there alive. It was fascinating. And then what is he going to do on Shabbat in North Korea and eating kosher food?
He took a lot of tuna. He took a lot of tuna with him.
It would be so interesting. Any reporter going to North Korea, I would be interested in. But somebody with such additional issues, that was very impressive.
I see that Sandy McMurray donated. Thank you so much, Sandy.
So much, Sandy.
It means the world to us. Thank you for supporting our nonprofit. May you and your loved ones stay safe in this difficult time, and may you grow in health and wisdom every day.
Amen.
Right. Do you have any final thoughts?
Stay strong, everybody.
Stay strong.
I'm sure for some of you this is very, very difficult. Some of you may, God forbid, be sick, and may you be healed quickly and completely. May your lives not be disrupted too much, or your financial situation.
Amen.
And
Amen.
may there be a cure and a vaccine and many tests and everything we need to make it through this plague before Passover.
Amen. There is a Talmudic teaching. We're not going to come to it for a long time in our Daf Yomi journey. It might be in the Talmud in a few places, but I'm pretty sure it's late. I think it's in Sanhedrin. I'm not even sure right now. But it's a small saying. It says that salvation comes in the blink of an eye. Right? Salvation can come in the blink of an eye. And we just don't know how long this is going to last, or what's going to be our exit from this crazy state.
We just don't know. Some
we really don't know.
6 months. Today we just heard it might be more like a couple months.
We don't know.
We just don't know. I mean, if nothing else, this has taught us, we are not in control.
Exactly. We are not in control.
Yeah.
But if we as a society and as families and as institutions and as individuals, if we learn something and we commit to take meaning out of this and make good come out of it, if we're going to live healthier lives, we've been saying here, if we acknowledge our Creator, if we thank Him, right? So many people are living in a godless state, in a godless world. They've just lost touch. I mean, young people, it's not even their fault. They don't know. They weren't educated that the world was created for a reason, that each of us was given another day in this world for a reason.
Not just young people that weren't educated.
At this point, it's been going on for generations. There's just so many people that are totally disjunct. And we hope that people can grow in gratitude. And if you're in that school that you've got no reason to believe in God, well, listen, you can't be sure that there is no God. And in case there is a God who created this world and gave you your life and gave you everything that you have, say thank you. Say thank you and say it out loud. And the more of us that say thank you and say it out loud, the better off we'll be. This plague that we're experiencing right now, given all the plagues in the history of mankind, it's pretty gentle. It's pretty gentle. It could have been a lot worse. Let's get the message from this plague as it is. Let's grow in wisdom. Let's grow in meaning. Let's treat each other like mensches. Let's take care of the vulnerable members of our communities. If you know an old person who's shut in, is not part of a faith community that's reaching out to them and offering, to go fetch errands for them and go to the store and get them their food or whatever they need from the supermarket, and they're afraid to go to the supermarket because they're in a high-risk category, offer to do it for them. Hopefully we're going to be sharing Mike Schofler's new website soon, where he's helping people make those connections. It's the most important thing. But if you have a neighbor that you know is old, call, see how they're doing, and offer to do an errand for them. It's just such an important thing that you can do right now. My friends, sending you all lots of love. We are sending you lots of love. Take care.